Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Resistance, which is episode 12 of season 2 of Star Trek Voyager. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Voyager one episode at a time. In this video I cover the second season episode Resistance. So Resistance is the episode in which Voyager is about to crash and run out of energy permanently because they need deuterium, so they are trying to negotiate for some from a resistance of a race of people who lives under the authoritarian regime of the Mulgrew. So Neelix manages to get the deuterium to Voyager just in time to save the day. However, B'Elanna and Tuvok are captured and taken prisoner by the Mulgrew, and Janeway is injured but then saved by this deranged old man. The old man in question cares for Janeway but thinks that she is his daughter, and Janeway can't convince him otherwise, and so uses his help to help try to find B'Elanna and Tuvok and set them free. Meanwhile, Chakotay is trying to negotiate in vain with the Mulgrew, and eventually Janeway does manage to break in and rescue B'Elanna and Tuvok. However, she learns that the old man in question, who wouldn't go away and went with her, that his daughter is in fact dead, and his wife is also dead, and he believes that they're still alive. And the main bad guy explains that they both died waiting for him, and so thinks that it's his fault, and he attacks the main bad guy and they kill each other. But just before he dies, Janeway tells him that, yes, I am your daughter and I forgive you. So so my personal experience with this episode, this is another episode where I watched with my girlfriend, and so I was not hardly paying any attention to it. And in fact, I remember being very confused. I'm like, what? Who's this old man? Why is he acting all weird? And I didn't think much of it. I thought it felt like kind of tropish to me, like the crazy old man who thinks is the daughter, blah blah blah. And so I wasn't really paying attention. Plus, I didn't know where they were, what was going on, why were they on the planet. That's what I get for not paying attention. So it wasn't until years later, and might have been all the way, well, maybe I think in the early 2000s, it might have been all the way in the early 2000s when I started watching Voyager and reruns, that I finally saw this episode from start to finish. I actually realized, like, wow, this is a really good episode, like, ever since then. And the more I watched it, the more I loved it and the more I liked it. So, I mean, first of all, paying full attention helps. But secondly, I think being older and sort of more mature and into this sort of drama also helped a bit. Now, so this episode it has a story by credit from Michael Jan Friedman and Ryan J. What was his name? Kevin J. Ryan. Sorry, Kevin J. Ryan and Michael Jan Friedman. Now, I recognize the name of Michael Jan Friedman because he is a Star Trek novelist who wrote a bunch of Star Trek novels. In fact, he was one of the more popular ones. He wrote a couple of hardcovers. He wrote the Next Generation novel Reunion, not the episode, but the novel Reunion, which was about Picard having like a reunion with his other people in the Stargazer, and somebody's the murderer and something. And then there was also a book called Saratoga, which is about Captain Sisko having a reunion with his old crew from the Saratoga, but someone's a murderer. It's basically the same plot. But I actually liked Saratoga better because I liked getting Sisko's backstory, and I think he kind of perfected the storyline. He did like a bunch of other. He did the novelization for Relics, He also did a novel I really liked that was underrated called Requiem, about Picard traveling back in time to the episode Arena right before the massacre at Cestus 3, and so he like makes friends with all the people at Cestus 3, knowing that they're doomed to die in a Gorn attack. And then he travels back after he I think he even falls in love with someone. Of course she dies, and then he travels back to the present, avoiding death, and has to negotiate with the Gorn in the present. So I thought that was a good book. I'm trying to look at some of the other ones he wrote. Kahless apparently wrote a book about Kahless. I never read that. Crossover, I remember reading that as with Scotty and Spock and McCoy teaming up in the 24th century with Picard. Yeah, that was dumb. That's just nostalgia for the original series. But anyway, he had a particular writing style. One that he also wrote the episode Wrath of the Prophets it was a Deep Space Nine book, but Rolaren showed up. It's one of the many different things that say whatever happened to Rolaren. I think this is before the Maquis were wiped out, so she was still in the Maquis, I think, or something. But anyway, that was a decent novel. I barely remember it, so you don't even ask me about it. But I remember it being okay. So anyway, Michael Jan Friedman had a particular kind of writing style. One that I found was, I don't know if I'd say sentimental, but definitely emotional. He definitely liked to sort of play with the main character sort of having a strong relationship with someone that's unique and having like a sad or emotional ending. He seemed to be leaning towards more like emotional stories, because there's other novelists like Peter David, for example, who recently passed, unfortunately, rest in peace. But Peter David had more of an adventure, weird sci-fi adventure style of writing. And then there was, what's her face, Diane, someone who I couldn't stand her writing style because it was all like swashbuckling, and I didn't like that style. But so all these authors, just like the writers of the TV shows, have a different writing style, like Brennan Brega's into weird sci-fi shit. And yeah, the authors had a particular writing style. And so that was Michael Jan Friedman's more sort of dealing with emotionally impactful stories. So in other words, this episode fits right in. And when I heard that it was written by him, I was like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And his co-writer, God, what was his name again? Kevin Ryan, was apparently his editor for the novels. And apparently he had pitched for The Next Generation, but they didn't pick up his story. And so he tried pitching again to Voyager, because he's like, oh, he's enjoying Voyager and all the new characters. So he pitched 6 stories. And this is the one they bought. Now, so the original idea was actually kind of different. So, well, first of all, the core of the idea, and this is something that is the same, is he wanted to do a play on Don Quixote. And I can't speak to that. I've never read the novels or any adaptations of it, and so I have no idea what this is. I'm completely ignorant of that book. I just heard the term tilting of windmills. I know that the Expanse references because the ship Rosinante is named off of it. So I don't know anything about Don Quixote, so I can't speak to that at all. But apparently that was the original idea, was to do a version of that. So, but how it was different was the main character was B'Elanna, and the aliens that they were dealing with are actually Kazon, and so the main character would be this older Kazon man. So of course this is the two. So they bought the idea from Michael Jan Friedman and Kevin J. Ryan, and they wrote a script and they submitted it. And then the producer, Jerry Taylor, and the producer's like, okay, your job is done. Thanks so much. And then they turned it over to Lisa Klink to write the teleplay. And so that's when all the changes happened. She changed it to a random alien of the week instead of the Kazon. Of course, they changed it from a B'Elanna story to a Janeway story. And they added a few story beats in, such as when Caleb goes around with that, melon on his head. He's like, "Where's my hat?" And they added that in. And apparently, the thing with Janeway pretending to be a prostitute to overcome the guards, they added that in. But it seems to me that the rest of the story, the main beats about Caleb's, and his daughter and his wife being killed and all of that and going around following Janeway. Of course, in the original script it was B'Elanna, but still, all that apparently was the same. So and because it still feels like a Michael Jan Friedman story. So I think they definitely kept the heart of it. Now, I could also talk about Lisa Klink, who I just discovered this year. I did a video earlier this year about where I explored all the different writers in Star Trek, all the prominent writers, and I didn't mention her because I wasn't familiar with her, and I got a comment on my video, "Hey, what about Lisa Klink?" And I was like, "Oh, actually never heard of her." But so going through it again, it's interesting learning about her. So I talked about her recently because her first script I covered a few weeks ago, which was Hippocratic Oath over on DS9, which is an amazing episode. And apparently, so after she wrote that, she was hired to be a staff writer on Voyager. I don't know why they put her on Voyager. Maybe they had more room for writers on Voyager and didn't have any room on DS9. And this is the first episode that she wrote. In fact, Jerry Taylor even confirmed that she basically gave her this script as a sort of test to be like, because it was her first script, it was like a sink or swim, because it was actually a hard idea to crack, apparently, the whole Don Quixote type storyline. Even though they did have a rough script from Michael Jan Friedman, they still needed to adjust it, and so they basically gave it to her to test and say, "Can you crack this script?" And apparently she passed that test with flying colors, and because everyone liked the finished product. And she said that even if she had been an experienced writer or experienced Voyager writer, even then it still would have been a difficult script. But she was actually proud of the work she did. So looking at her work, I do think that she is a really good writer, because there was first Hippocratic Oath, which was a really great episode, and then this, which is also a great episode, and then you have in season 3 you'll have Remember, which, if I remember correctly, it was a TNG script that was adapted to Voyager. So apparently she was the one who adapted it, and I thought she did an amazing job with that as well. So she was a staff writer for season 2, the rest of season 2 of Voyager, and season 3 and 4, and then quit after that because, of course, all the good writers left off to season 4. That makes total sense to me. But I don't know the story of why she left. But her writing credits, other than that, are mostly mediocre episodes, like Message in the Bottle, which is overrated, and Retrospect, and something like Displaced, and those episodes are fine. And then there's the one Favorite Son, which a lot of people hate, which I just think is fine. And so the rest of the episodes she wrote were not as remarkable as these main three that I mentioned. But, a lot of times, as I talk about, the writers are just handed an assignments by the head writer, saying, by the executive producer, by Jerry Taylor, by saying, here, write this story. And so sometimes if it's not very good, maybe the story idea wasn't good. So versa. Excuse me. So yeah. So it might not be entirely her fault. So I stand by that. I think she was a really good writer, and I think that's evident from this episode. Now I do very much agree with changing it from B'Elanna to Janeway. I think that was absolutely the smart thing to do. And I don't know if I agree with changing it from the Kazon to the Alien of the Week. Because when I first heard the idea of it being a Kazon, I was turned off. I was like, Kazon, that's stupid. But the more I thought about it, like, that actually would have fleshed out the Kazon more if we met, like, a sympathetic character that lost his wife and daughter, and Janeway ended up like being sentimental, like saying that stuff to him right before he died. That would have helped flesh out the Kazon and help them feel more real, more like a dynamic, lived-in species, and not just the Klingon ripoffs. And they could have explored Kazon culture more. Whereas in this episode, it's just some alien of the week you don't know anything about, you don't care about, and you never see again. So the more I think about it, the more I thought they actually should have kept it the Kazon. Just my humble opinion. And but the thing with the guy going around being like, "Where's my hut? Whatever." I don't mind that. That's fine if you want to add that in. Like, the one complaint I have about that scene, because I heard different things. Some people love that scene, some people hate it. My only thing about that scene is I don't buy that the Mokra would just forget that they were about to take this guy prisoner just because some dude came around acting like an insane idiot and being like, "Where's my heart?" Like, yeah, it's distracting, but they wouldn't just forget. Like, they just let the guy slip through. Why aren't the guards like holding him? Like, they had him. Why weren't they continuing to like hold him? Why did they just get distracted by some guy acting like a idiot? What I think the problem with that scene is timing. So I would have bought the scene if, because when the main, I can't remember, what's the main dude's name? The main bad guy, Gruss, is that it? Ogris or Ogris? Yeah, I think it, or Ogris or whatever the hell his name is. But anyway, when he was like, "Hey you," they should have had Caleb run out and act like an idiot then. They should have had him do his crazy shit right there when he said, "Hey you," and if he came out and be like, "Where's my head?" Blah, 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 then I would have bought that they would have gotten distracted by him and forgotten, "Oh, what were we doing? What's that? Oh, who cares about that guy?" But from the fact that they went beyond, "Hey you, what are you doing here? We're going to take you into questioning," and they had the guards actually grab him, to me that's too late. Like, there's no way that they would just forget. And why would they stop holding him? Why did they just let him slip away? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But if they had just done it a little bit earlier, where he interfered right after he said, "Hey you," then I would have bought it. So for me, it's a timing thing. But otherwise, like, this scene's fine. And so, but the whole thing with Janeway being a prostitute, like, that was stupid. Jerry Taylor defended it because it's like, yeah, she's going to use whatever means she has to try to rescue her crew. But I don't know. It's such a cliche. I think that's my biggest problem. It's not. it's not because I'm woke or any bullshit like that. It's just because it's just a cliche. It's just like so dumb. They did the same thing in the Homecoming in Deep Space Nine, where Kira. That's how she did broken Lee Nallis out of prison. As Kira pretended to be a prostitute and go up to the Cardassian guard and be like, "Oh yeah," and that kind of bothered me too. I think it's worse that because they're kind of just repeating it, and it's even outside of Star Trek, it's a cliche. So that's kind of just an easy fix. It seems like just a lazy way to get them in the prison, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Now, I read an interesting. So getting back to the writers, Michael Jan Friedman said that he liked what they did with the script. He actually, once he saw they switched it from B'Elanna to Janeway, he said that was actually the smart thing to do. And he said that the whole process was really good, and working with Jerry Taylor and the producing staff, they were all very nice and worked together, and they liked what Lisa Klink did to the script, and so they thought it was a very positive experience. But with Michael Piller, so apparently I read an interesting quote with Michael Piller because he was talking about the preview that UPN ran for this episode and how he was pissed off and hated it. Now, I talked about this in some other videos. I don't think I've done it in my episode reviews yet, but I'll get into it more. Is that I remember the original commercials that they had when UPN commercials when this was first airing. And they were sensationalized, they were ridiculous, some of them were like so stupid. Like I talked about the one for Rise over in season 3 that was about an asteroid, and NBC was airing a miniseries called Asteroid at that time, so they said, "This is the episode that will kick NBC's asteroid." And there were some other ones too, like Remember, which is an episode about a Holocaust and like Holocaust denials, and the whole episode was like, "Ooh, B'Elanna has sexy time," and look at how sexy. Ooh, she's having lots of sex, and it was totally misrepresented the episode. And I remember those ones in particular, and there's a few others that I remember watching when they first came out, but I didn't remember this one. I don't know if I saw it. But I went and watched it. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it. They have some of the older ones. But anyway, Michael Pillar's issue with it is that it was being like pain, torture, and showing like, Tuvok and B'Elanna being tortured and being like death and pain, and what will Janeway do to save her crew? And it showed her going up pretending to be a prostitute. I could get why Michael Piller would be mad at that. They're implying that Janeway's going to prostitute herself to save her crew. Now, granted, she pretends to be one for like a few seconds just so she can knock that dude out, but the episode's implying that she's actually going to, do the deed. and plus the whole thing is, he said it made it seem like that was all about dark torture and just sensationalizing the violence. But that's why UPN commercials, like those UPN commercials, were so ridiculous. I think, in my recollection, they got better in the later seasons. And also when they showed Voyager in reruns, they actually redid the commercials and they made like proper ones that like were similar to the ones Deep Space Nine and TNG had. So some of them, if you go online and watch, you might be like, "Oh, this looks normal." If that's true, then you're probably watching the ones they redid for syndication, for reruns. Because the ones UPN did were so fucking ridiculous and sensationalized. But I found that really interesting. So, I guess I should also talk about the guest actor. Let's see if I can find his name here. Joel Grey, who plays Caleb. Now, I've watched reviews, read some reviews, and heard people talk about this episode, and they always mention Joel Grey. Like, oh my god, they got Joel Grey for this episode. And I think Delta Flyers were even saying, wow, this is the biggest star that we ever had on our show at this point, I think, to be fair. And I'm like, I've never heard of this guy. I'm sorry. Well, apparently he won an Oscar in 1972 for Cabaret, which I never saw, don't care about. And he was in a movie called Remo Williams with Kate Mulgrew. Apparently it's some action. I never heard of this movie in my life, and I watched the trailer for it, and it looked like the really cheesy, like Schwarzenegger ripoff or type action movie. And apparently in that movie he played an Asian character, and he is, if you didn't notice, not Asian. And so they made him, basically gave him yellow face and put his eyebrows back, and he was being like this kung fu master or something. And apparently, so in Delta Flyers, this is really interesting, Garrett Wong was talking about that and saying that he knew him from that, and because of that he resented him being there. He was like, I understand he's a good actor and he did a good job in the episode, but I didn't really like the fact that he was there because he accepted that role. He didn't have to accept that role. And he was, talking about how even in the 90s or in the 80s when that movie was made, it was completely unacceptable to do blackface. Yet they were getting away with doing, yellow face. And so he was very, very upset about that, which I thought was very interesting. But, yeah, I never heard of them. All these people are like, oh, he's such a big actor, and I have no idea who the fuck he is. The only thing I know him is from this. I think I might have saw him on some supporting roles. Yeah, apparently he was in The Old Man, a show I just saw a couple years ago that was starring, what's-his-face, the dude, the Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges. It was apparently this Hulu show that was about, like, this, old guy who used to be like this elite secret agent James Bond type, and he comes out of retirement. He was apparently in that. I don't know for how long. I don't remember. Maybe I saw him in that. I don't know. But that just came out 2 years ago, so he is still doing acting to this day, and he looks old in this episode, which came out like 30 years ago, so, or 29. So yeah, but The Old Man was his last credit, so maybe he stopped doing acting after that. But it was just a couple years ago. Trying to look at, he was in House apparently. I might have saw him in that. I think I'm somewhat remember seeing him in House. I don't think I clocked him when I first saw it. He was in 6 episodes of Oz. I don't remember that at all. I don't know who he could have played. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I never watched that. And Outer Limits, I might have. Oh, I think I can't remember. I think he was in an episode that sucked. Oh yeah, I think I remember him in that one episode that sucked. Yeah, but anyway, no, never heard of him. Oh, he's in Matlock. How about that? But anyway, I thought he did a good job in this episode. I don't think, like some people were saying, that he made this episode. I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, I suppose that if a lesser actor played this role, then the episode wouldn't be quite as good, because I think he did a really good job. Like, he did really sell it. Especially playing, someone who's kind of not all there, who's delusional, basically. and also making him a sympathetic character. So that is definitely, he definitely did. It was definitely a hard job to pull off, and he definitely did. So he definitely sold it. But I wouldn't go as far as to say he made the episode. I think that's, or that he was the only good thing about the episode. I think that's stretching it and not giving the good script enough credit. Because I think other actors could have done a good job, but they would also have to be good actors. If they had a lesser actor who didn't really know what they're doing, then it kind of could have tanked the whole episode, sure. But it is a very strong script. So the biggest issue I had with this episode is the fact that it starts mid-story. And I think that's, I mean, the first time I watched it, I wasn't really paying attention, but I think that just added to my confusion. But even when I did finally watch it from start to finish, I find that kind of storytelling just disconnecting. I don't know. I don't typically like that. Like, I like there to be a firm first act and a firm third act. If they're too skimpy on either, like, I don't particularly like it. I like to be good setup and good payoff. Now there's exceptions to that, of course. There's exceptions to every rule. Like, I like a lot of these sort of out of sequence, movies like Tarantino and stuff like that. Like, if it's done well. But here's the thing, it has to, like, justify why it's doing that. There has to be a really good reason. It has to contribute to an artistic vision on why you're doing it, not just, we just too lazy to write at the beginning, or let's just do it this way as a style. No, you gotta have a specific, you gotta earn it, you gotta justify it. It's kind of like the movie First Contact, and my biggest complaint about that movie is that it doesn't really have a first act. It's just like, the Borg are here, okay, let's go attack them, and that's it. I mean, they do that bullshit with them going to the neutral zone for no reason, but that doesn't count as the first act. They don't do enough to set up the Borg. It's just, here it is and here they are, and I hate that. And so in this episode, we start the episode with Voyager already being out of power, with them already negotiating with these aliens. Now, I know the argument could be made that the reason why they did it that way is so they could have more time on Janeway and Caleb's relationship, which is the heart of the episode. But here's my counter to that. You could have had a teaser. You could have had a 3-4 minute teaser, which the opening scene before the credits, they call it teaser. I get confused because there's also a teaser trailer. But anyway, you could have had a teaser with B'Elanna explaining to Janeway that they're really out of power, and like, we're running out of power if we don't find this deuterium, and let's go find it. And then you could cut to, we found this deuterium. Neelix knows this alien race, and Neelix could pipe up and be like, yeah, I know this alien race who could sell us some, but they're part of an authoritarian society, but whatever. And they're like, okay, well, it's worth the risk, so Neelix, contact your whatever, and let's go there. And then they could show cut to ship going there, and it's losing power, and like, we're out of power, and you see the away team beam down, and you see Neelix go over to the dude and say, here, let me sell this thing, and then so Neelix goes off with the dude, and then you start the episode where the episode actually started, and boom, you got like a 5-minute teaser. That did not take very long. Like, that's all you needed to do, is just the proper setup. So I don't feel so confused and unorientated. It's like, wait, who are these people again? What the fuck is going on? When did they come out of power? Like, what's going on? All I had to do is just take a few minutes to, like, set it up properly and do it in the proper order. And it would not take that much. It would not divert that much time from the rest of the episode. You could cut back on some of those scenes with B'Elanna and Tuvok. They were kind of boring. or the Chakotay negotiating. Like, those scenes were kind of boring. Cut back on one of those, or both of those a little bit. and to make room for a proper first act. That's all I fucking ask for. But it just like makes me feel like I'm missing something whenever episodes and shit do that. It's just like the writers are too lazy to actually set it up properly. But anyway, that's just my taste. I know a lot of people might not agree with that, but that is actually probably my biggest complaint about the episode. But another little nitpick I have about this episode that I was thinking about is that this is inconsistent with the episode Prime Factors from season 1, because in that episode they possibly could have had this technology to take them halfway home, possibly even all the way home, which has been stated to be their main goal in life and the thing that they desperately want more than anything. But the main, magistrate guy, the government official that they were dealing with, it was an asshole who was just using them and had no intention of sharing this technology. But they found another official in the government who was willing to give them this technology, but do it on the sly. It was sort of not an official trade. Like, he didn't have the authority to do it, so he was kind of doing it as sort of a black market kind of sell, but he was a government official. And Janeway said, no, that violates the Prime Directive. Prime Directive is more important than anything. We can't deal with these unofficial government back trading. That would be immoral, and we won't do it. Cut to this episode. They're dealing with a rebellion, with a resistance under the direct authority of the official government of that world. That's way worse than dealing with that one dude. Now, the argument for that could be, oh, well, the ship was about to die and be trapped in space forever, and they were going to lose all power and they would never recover, so the situation was so dire that Janeway was willing to violate the Prime Directive. My counter argument to that would be, they could have gotten home, which is just as dire as the situation here. Like, that's just as desirable. So if she's willing to bend the Prime Directive here, of course, to me, it would be more probable that she'd be willing to bend the Prime Directive there, because it's not just fixing the ship, it's getting home, which is a bigger deal. So I don't buy that excuse at all. So that they were just desperate, because they're desperate to get home. So I find it inconsistent. They could say, oh, this is an evil authoritarian regime. So they're still the official government. It's still breaking the Prime Directive. They're actually giving support. Assume not weapons, but they're giving something, because they are buying the deuterium. So they are giving aid to a armed rebel resistance that could change the balance of power on the planet. Come on. That is one of the biggest defying the Prime Directive moments in the show yet. So yeah. And I just noticed just how inconsistent it is with Prime Factors, where Janeway had to stick up her butt and go, no, we gotta go by the rules. Now, people always point to, people always say that Janeway violates the Prime Directive all the time. Someone's gonna have to point it out to me, because I haven't really noticed that many instances. A lot of instances people do point out. I'm like, not really. That's fine. I don't really have an issue with that. I don't think it's a violation of the Prime Directive. But this one, I just think is in direct contrast to Prime Factors. That's my biggest issue. But something, if I haven't made it clear yet, I love this episode. If I haven't been very clear, like, those minor complaints aside, which I don't think are that big of a deal, honestly, the core emotional theme of, which I know a lot of people have experience in dealing with a parent or someone who with Alzheimer's or some other sort of disease, how difficult that is. And I think this is a great character story for Janeway, that you could tell that she feels sorry for him and she's trying to help him, and they have such good chemistry. And again, this is where you have the Joel Grey comes in with his good acting, and this is where it really pays off, the chemistry between the two, and he does really sell the performance. And Kate Mulgrew was quoted as saying that because the two of them knew each other, they worked together in that other movie, and they knew each other, and so that made the chemistry work even more, and there was natural chemistry, and that really comes off. But of course, not bearing the lead here, or I am bearing the lead a bit, is that ending was so emotionally powerful. It was tear-inducing. I think I forgot to mention this in the tearjerker endings, because goddamn, is this a strong tearjerker ending. This is a really powerful, hits me right here. And part of that is because of the fact of how you get to relate to this character. You get to care about him. And that is actually impressive. Also, not just for the actor, but also for the writers, to create this character who is simply like a goofy, crazy, he thinks Janeway's his daughter, but make him sympathetic at the same time. And when I wasn't paying attention to the episode, all I saw was this goofy, crazy character, and that's stupid and annoying, get him out of here. But when I actually did watch the episode, I noticed that they made him sympathetic. They made you attached to him. They made you see it from his perspective, the way he's talking about his wife, and he's looking for the letters, and it's where's the letters I wanted to tell her. You really feel for him. And of course, a huge part of that is, I have to once again praise Dennis McCarthy, who, again, his music is always amazing. He's by far the best musician that worked in Star Trek for his amazing music. And I think I might have even put this on the top 10 soundtracks of Voyager, because this is a really good one. He does those flute music really well. He can do it the punch emotional moments, and particularly the ones with Caleb going crazy and being where's my wife and my daughter, I miss her, and the flute music they had, it was just so powerful. So all the good writing, good acting, good music, probably good directing too. It didn't bother me. It's just contributed to a really, really powerful story. And the ending where we find out, it's like a twist. It was a twist ending, because we knew that his daughter probably died, we thought his wife was being held prisoner, because he kept saying she's being held prisoner, and Janeway's I'll go find her, but then we find out the twist is when the evil guy, I can't remember his name. What's the evil guy's name again? Algris? Yeah, Algris. But anyway, when evil guy reveals that his daughter and wife were actually dead, that because he didn't show up, but he said earlier, I didn't show up when I was supposed to meet her, and she got taken prisoner, but she actually died, and then his daughter tried to free their mother, and she died trying to escape. And so he was delusional, thinking that they're both alive, but they're both dead. And so that was actually a gut punch of a twist. Like, that made this character who, even though he was sympathetic to this stage, but he mostly came off as like goofy and silly, but it really like made him a really tragic figure that really brought such more emotional weight to the whole story. And then having it so he is dying, like he, you know, when that guy reveals this, he's saying like they're both dead, and I think they kind of broke through to him, and he's realizing in that moment that he's telling the truth. So he lashes out, attacks him, and gets killed. He manages to kill the dude, evil dude, but he gets killed himself by doing it. And then in his last moments of life, Janeway is saying, he's like, oh, they said, you know, they said my daughter was dead. Janeway's saying, no, he's lying, Father. I'm okay. My mother's okay. And we both forgive you. I'm having a hard time not tearing up just talking about it. It was such a powerful ending, especially, again, like Kate Mulgrew really, really sells it. And again, the music really sells it. It is such a powerful, tragic moment. And then, of course, there's the necklace that he gave Janeway that was his daughter's necklace. And he's like, oh, here, you can have it. And she's like, no, I can't accept this. But so there's a coda at the end of the episode that I actually didn't remember. I didn't remember what happens after, you know, he dies and they beam back up the ship, and they have Harry Kim goes into her ready room and gives his report, and like, we'll have repairs done and blah blah blah. And it seemed kind of a pointless scene, like, why do we need to know when the repairs are going to be done? But then Harry Kim walks out, and then Janeway looks at the necklace and just sort of sentimentally smiles and holds it to her. I don't think I ever noticed that before. Like, I love this episode. Or if I did notice, I didn't really pay that much attention. Because I love this episode. I've loved it for a while. But that was like an inner light type moment. Like, I don't think it's quite as powerful as the inner light. But if you don't know what I'm referring to, I'm talking about when, at the end of the inner light, when Picard, after he went through his whole lifetime, and he gets the flute, and he holds the flute, and he starts playing the flute. Like, I just burst out into tears whenever that happens. And this is a similar moment. Not as powerful, because I haven't really noticed it before. But once I noticed it, I love that it's subtle, though. I love that they don't hit you over the head. It's even more subtle than the flute thing. She just holds the necklace and reminisces and has that sort of, you know, feeling of this is going to be something important to her. And of course we never see it again, but it's still a powerful moment in the episode that meant something, that his death meant something, and it meant something that she was able to comfort him in his last moments of life. Like, so powerful. And it's so damn powerful. I mean, the stuff with B'Elanna and Tuvok in the cell, it's fine. Like, we don't really see these two characters interact much. It's basically her being like, oh, you know, you're a Vulcan. Don't you experience pain? And he's like, I do experience pain, blah, blah. And how he's, like, being logical when she tries to burst out in anger or whatever. It was fine. It was interesting. I would have rather spent more time on Janeway or have a proper setup to the goddamn episode. But it was fine. Okay, so I did have another issue with this episode that I should mention. The ending, as much as I love that ending, is so powerful. Earlier in the episode, Caleb talks about how the prison's impossible to break in. It's a fortress. There's mass computer systems, guards, sensors, weapons, everything. And it's a fortress that it's impossible to penetrate. And it was just like 2 guards standing outside. All Janeway had to do was like trick one into going to a dark corner and knock him out and walk in the prison, and there seemed to be no one in the prison. Like, there were no guards. Eventually they got in a firefight and they killed like the main evil dude, which was probably like, I don't know, he could have been the president of the planet for all we know. He was like definitely some high up authority figure that they just, because he was negotiating with Chakotay, so he was like, could have been, yeah, the leader of the whole world for all we knew. And they murdered him. And it was just 2 guards there. And they just backed away after they murdered him. It's like those guards knew that they had to give the emotional moment of Janeway saying goodbye to Caleb. Why weren't they attacking? Why did they just walk away? And why weren't there a hell of a lot more guards? But you know what? I had to mention it, but I'm willing to give it a pass. I don't let it bother me, because that's such a good ending. Part of me is like, yeah, who gives a fuck? Kind of similar to Inner Light, where that plot makes no sense on how the hell they had the technology to send up a probe that could attach to an alien, which they've never encountered aliens before, like in 1,000 years in the future, and they would be able to like input all these memories. Like, that is like impossible to buy. But I'm willing to let it go because it's such a fucking good episode, and it's the same thing here. Willing to hand wave it away because it's such a fucking good episode. Anyway, I would now like to thank my Patreon supporters very much for supporting me on Patreons. Very much appreciated. It does help me continue with my channel. I'd like to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse and Jordan Johnson. Thank you both so very, very much for your strong support. I also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Manny Jester, Joe Lavals, Alessandro Michelcio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you so very much for your support. So, we do have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Resistance? More like, gee, this buns. You know, I recently learned that buns is the lowest of the low. Like, when I was a young gun, we'd say, dude, that game is ass. But I heard that game is buns is even lower than ass. That's probably why we never heard Archer say buns on Enterprise. It wouldn't have made it to air. You can say ass, but you can't say buns. Wait, what were we talking about? Resistance from Star Wars? They're cool, but Resistance from Voyager? Great, it sucks. Tuvok? More like poo sock. I never heard of buns before. That must be, the thing that the youngins, the young whippersnappers are saying these days. I never heard anyone call things buns. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, what are the chances that I saw the terrible 28 years later in Resistance in the next episode up? Grandpa Simpson goes senile and thinks Homer is his grandchild. That's a little hint of that film I saw. I don't have the time to watch the average episode as Test cricket is way better. Some crazy old bastard thinks Janeway is his daughter. Sorry, not watching that. So my rating is 5. I saw Megan also today, which is a better movie. And the next Voyager episode is Prototype. I'm seeing a pattern here out of 10. Well, you know, I think this is a great episode. But, I haven't, I'm not, you know me, I'm not into horror movies. I never saw a Megan movie. I never will. I don't know. I was thinking about 28 years later, because I did see the first two, but I was never a huge fan of them, and I'm kind of over it. And if you say it's not any good, then I don't think I'll bother. But it's funny, apparently they had a similar plot point with a grandfather thinking that their son is the grandson. I don't know. Anyway, next comment is from Ricky, who says, "To me, this is one of those episodes that I didn't think much at first, but the more I watch, the more I like it, to the point that I might be as bold to say that this is one of the best episodes of the show." Now, hear me out. I know that on the surface level, it might seem dumb that this older senile guy is confusing that Janeway is his daughter, but as the episode goes on, you find out the tragic backstory of this guy, of what happened to his wife and daughter, and that he was too scared to join them, and they ended up dead because it was so tragic. And when the old man dies and Janeway says, "It's me, your daughter, and I forgive you," I bawled my eyes out. To me, this is one of the most emotionally powerful moments of the whole show, and it hits me personally because my grandmother died a few years back, and she was behaving the same way this guy, as she said, she had severe Alzheimer's. So that's why it's very personal to me. Also, the B plot with the crew on the planet to find resources. Again, this is what later seasons lose. It acknowledged that it had limited resources, and later on they seem to forget about it. But it's still a dark and suspenseful, so I really liked the Tuvok and B'Elanna story, so my rating is a 10 out of 10. I know I might seem overboard, but it just affects me personally with Janeway and the old guy. One of the best episodes of the show, and why I say season 2 is one of the best seasons of the show. I will say I am starting to warm up to season 2 a lot. I was starting to doubt it after the first run of episodes, which were really bad to mediocre. But now that season's hit its stride, and I talked about this in other videos, but for me, the strength of a season isn't necessarily how good the episodes in it are. It has a lot to do with the tone and the whole feel of the season, and I just love the feel and tone of season 2 way better than season 7 or season 6 even. It just seems not as emotionally constant, even through the bad episodes. But that being said, with great episodes like this one, the episodes are even better. but it did have a rough start, I will say, and there are a few more bad episodes coming up. But I do think season 2 is one of the better seasons of the show, mainly because of episodes like this. So I don't think you're going overboard at all, but that's just me. I know a lot of people seem to be mixed on this episode. The reviews I watched and the opinions I saw online, it seems like a polarized episode. It seems like you either love it or hate it or think it's okay. But I guess that's true of any episode. But it seems more people are split between those 3 points of view than normal. So as for the episode being dark, I think that's a very important point. That in tone, this feels more like a Deep Space Nine episode in the best way possible. It feels like it has that more sort of darker, which is why I think this episode's a little out of place for Voyager, if we're being fair. I don't think it completely matches up with the tone and style of the rest of the show, but I that's actually a good thing in my opinion, because Deep Space Nine has a much better tone and style than Voyager does. So this has more of a DS9 style, then that's totally in its favor. And apparently Michael Piller was trying to lead the show into a darker direction, be more dark and gritty. So it's been speculated that this episode, the tone of it was kind of something that he was promoting and something that he was trying to do, because he was trying to pull the show darker. But we know how this ended. This ended with him getting fired and the show turning to shit the next season. But that is a story for another time. So, next comment is from Norman Buchwald, who says, "This is perhaps more than any other episode in Voyager, the underrated episode. And what makes this episode good? Joel Grey. Sometimes it's good to have good guest actors, as will also be wowed later this season with Michael McKean. Well, granted, Sarah Silverman did have some issues in Future's End, but we'll wait until we get there. Someone with less talent could have made it more average or even poor, and he and Mulgrew provided some great scenes. Of course, UPM demonstrated how much they believed in this episode with that horrendous trailer of Catherine selling herself as a sex worker. The only reason I point my finger at UPN and not Berman or Trek in general is that I don't recall Homecoming of DS9 Kira selling herself, let alone O'Brien pimping her. If there's any Berman frustration, well, let me say I'll give it 9 forgotten necklaces out of 10. Yeah, no, that horrendous trailer. I didn't even know about that until I read Memory Alpha's the quote by Michael Piller saying how much he was mad about that. And I would be mad too. Like, that's bullshit. That's it. But a lot of those trailers were dumb, or fucking dumb. Like the one for Remember I talked about, where it was like a Holocaust episode, and you're like, look at how sexy this. Like, that was, I think, even worse. I don't know, my personal opinion. But I totally agree about this being the underrated episode. I don't agree that Joel Grey is the only thing that makes this episode good, though. I already talked about that, though. I think he was good, but it's a strong script. And maybe you're not suggesting otherwise, but I just want to emphasize that point. That I think another actor, this episode still could have been great with another actor. Even a lesser actor, but it wouldn't be as great. Let's say. Anyway, next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says, "Great episode. It took me a while to figure out the Mokra head guy is Tokath from Birthright. If I had not seen Birthright recently, I probably wouldn't have been able to place him. As others have pointed out, the final scene is great. I also like the market scene where Joel Grey provides the distraction. He's acting so silly, then when the guards are gone, you can see how scared he really was. Really great performance. It's also nice to see Janeway's softer, gentler side. Agree on all points." Now, as far as this being the same actor who played Tokath, which is the Romulan, if you don't remember, in Birthright Part 2, as soon as I saw this actor, I recognized him right away. I was like, I know this guy. I think I might have seen him in some other things as well. I think, wasn't he in another Star Trek? Hold on, I gotta look this up now. I might have seen him in other things, as well, because he looked so familiar, but I didn't quite place him directly with the Romulan from what's it called? He's in an episode of The Outer Limits. I remember that. That's probably where I recognize him the most from. That episode of The Outer Limits, which came out after this episode, but then again, I didn't actually watch this episode until years later, so I would have seen it by then. Yeah, that's right. It was one of my favorite episodes of The Outer Limits. He played the security chief of this colony who turned out to be an evil alien. He fucking did a good job with that. So that's probably where I recognize him from the most. But yeah, no. Apparently, he was in Data's Day. He played the Romulan in Data's Day as well. Yes. So he played a Romulan twice, and this time he's not playing a Romulan. That was the other one, and I think I might have recognized him for that. But I didn't place him into Birthright until I looked it up. But anyway, he's a good actor. He definitely plays evil guy as well. So much pain for one man to bear. Anyway, Next comment, I don't even know if he talks like that, but anyway, next comment is from Antarius. He says, there are a lot of things I like. A helpful Neelix, a planet without any caves. That's a good point. A crew that is acting competent, and finally the tragic backstory. Some exterior shots would have been great. Also, it would have been great if they showed the necklace in later episodes like they did with Picard's flute from the Inner Light. It is never explained why they suddenly had such a shortage of this element. It must have happened rather suddenly since the last episode. That's why we needed a freaking proper first act. Sorry, let me continue. Why haven't they sought permission to trade in the first place? Even if it is a repressive regime, Janeway would certainly follow normal Starfleet procedures and contact official government, but Mark certainly knows the answer to this. It begins with the words, "so the episode," and completes with the words, "can happen." Anyway, if they really wanted to trade secretly, then maybe the Doctor should have altered their appearance instead of just wearing local clothes. Good point. My rating is an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, fair points. I even agreed with I even mentioned earlier the whole thing about dealing with the government officials and how they're contradicting themselves. Great points. Don't think they matter. I still love the episode though. It doesn't matter to me. But you are right for pointing them out. I don't actually mind that the necklace was never seen again. That's not that big of a deal to me because, for one thing, Voyager's infamous for being episodic. And for another thing, I don't think it takes away from the episode that they don't see the necklace again. Would have been nice, sure. But is it necessary to make this episode good? Absolutely not. No. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for Resistance out of 10 is going to be a 10, the best. Despite my complaints about not having a first act, despite my complaints about this being contradicting prime factors, despite my complaints about the ending scene with the prison, which doesn't make any sense, or my complaints about how they messed up the scene with, Caleb acting all crazy, none of that matters. I don't care about any of that. That ending was so fucking good. That was so powerful. I agree with what Ricky said, that it was one of the most powerful moments in the entire show. It showed heart, it showed emotion, it was great character work, great acting. This is why I like those novels that Michael Jan Freeman wrote. It's that type of emotional core you could really tell came out, and Lisa Klink obviously did an amazing job adapting it. And the actors blew it away. The music was fucking amazing. I love Dennis McCarthy. Never go wrong with him. And sometimes he just has amazing scores when they actually let him off the leash and let him do his thing, which they obviously did in this episode. It was such I just love that flute music. It is just a really damn good episode. Can never have a dry eye after watching that ending, which is one of the most emotional endings that they have. It was just so powerful the way she's like, "Yes, I'm your daughter and I forgive you." You just cannot unnot cry, and to me that overcomes any flaws with the episode. And I mean, all those things totally override those stupid nitpicks I have. Screw those nitpicks. It's such a powerful episode. And I do think that this is one of the best episodes of the show, period. Be looking for this when I do my top 10. I think I put this in top 10 before, so. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment below. All that sort of things does really help me out. If you really want to support the channel, you could possibly do so by supporting me on Patreon. There is a link in their description below. Also in that description, you can check out links to my Facebook page, my Blue Sky page, and if you want to leave comments, short comments under 50 words, you can do so, by just following the link, going to Facebook or Blue Sky, and leave a comment, and I'll read it along with the Patreon comments. However, if you do want to support me on Patreon, you can write much longer comments, as the ones I just read, and you get other rewards such as pre-releases, access to a Patreon only series of videos I do exclusively for my Patreon supporters, where I revisit reviews that I've already made. So, let's see what's coming up on the old channel here. Thursday will be my review for the newest episode of Strange New Worlds, Season 3, Episode 6. Saturday, I'll be over on Patreon doing one of those Patreon exclusive videos revisiting my review for the two-parter Homefront and Paradise Lost. Then I'll be back here on Monday for a new Voyager review for the episode Prototype. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Strange New Worlds and many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.